Hey guys, this is Princess here, and in today's video we are going to be talking about Final Fantasy XV's Gladiolus. I am so excited to talk about his kit with you guys. My man is finally coming to Opera Omnia Global, and I am really excited. So the synergy characters on his event include Gladio, Kuja, Sabin, Vayne, and Gao. So looking at Gladio's profile, his crystal affinity is black and he uses broadswords. His spears are A, B, and C, and his roles are melee, tank, debuffer, and battery. Going over to his stats, at level 1 he has an HP of 1100, initial brave of 140, max brave of 525, attack of 180, and defense of 190. At maximum he has 14,340 HP, 3,360 initial brave, 10,657 max brave, 3,360 attack, and then 4,729 defense. Going over to his first skill, we have Tempest, which will raise his brave based on attack. It's an AoE melee brave HP attack that will deal split damage. It grants party brave based on HP damage dealt, and it grants 1 level of King's Shield for 5 turns, the maximum stats being 10, and it grants allies Royal Guard for 5 turns. So King's Shield will go up by 1 level when Gladio takes damage, either brave or HP. And he will also take damage for any single target attacks on allies with the Royal Guard buff. So what that means is he's basically going to cover for anyone who has the Royal Guard buff. So he's like Galuf. So then we have, as for his buffs, so King's Shield will raise Gladio's max brave, attack, and his defense, and it also grants him brave and HP damage reduction. Keep in mind though that defense, brave, and HP damage effects don't increase based on the level, and then Royal Guard will also reduce the brave and HP damage taken. Second skill we have is Dawn Hammer. This will also raise his brave based on attack, and it's a 2-hit AoE brave single target HP attack. It grants party brave based on HP damage dealt. It lowers target's max brave for 4 turns, and it will grant Crownsguard's Pride to Gladio for 3 turns. So Crownsguard Pride will just raise Gladio's max brave and his attack. And then we have his C65, which is HP heal and boost all. So what this does is it restores Gladio's HP and it raises the party's max brave for 3 turns. Moving on to the extensions, so Tempest will now boost brave granted based on his attack. It adds 4 brave hits that will deal more damage, and it has a 150% max brave overflow. For his Dawn Hammer extension, this will also boost brave granted based on attack. It will add 6 brave hits that will deal more damage and now has a 150% max brave overflow. And the Crownsguard Pride buff will change his brave and HP attack into brave HP attack plus. So brave attack plus will now grant party brave based on Gladio's attack, and then HP attack plus does the same thing, but it will also raise brave based on attack, and it's now a melee brave HP attack. As for his artifact passives, the ones you really want to go for are Attack 108, Max Brave 330, and his C50, which is Survival Skills up. You can go with HP, but like he's already going to have a lot of HP anyway, so you really don't need it unless you really like you're not really like sure of yourself and just want to make sure that he doesn't die and just have a lot of HP on him. But it's up to you. I personally wouldn't recommend it, but if you want to go for it, then that's fine. Moving on to his armor and his weapons. So his 35 CP armor is Gladio's Fatigues, so this will add 680 to his HP and 72 to his attack. We have his 90 CP armor, which is Gladio's Wrist Brace. This will add 110 to his initial brave and 84 to his defense. And when it's realized, it will add 680 to his HP and 220 to his max brave. And we have his 7-star armor, which is the bulletproof suit. And what this does is it will raise his brave granted by 5%, and it also raises cap damage. Now going to his weapons, we have the 2-handed sword. Tempest will now boost the brave increase. It boosts brave damage, and it deals more damage on single targets, and will also extend King's Shield and Royal Guard, and it also raises King's Shield level by 1. And we have his 35, which is the War Sword. So when using Dawn Hammer, it will boost brave. It boosts the brave increase. It will also boost brave damage. It deals more damage on single targets, and it will extend the Crownsguard's Pride buff instead. Then we have his EX weapon, which is called the Force Dealer, and this will grant him the EX skill called Maelstrom. So it's a 6-hit melee brave HP attack that is delivered twice. It adds a 120% max brave overflow. It grants party brave based on his own attack after the last HP attack, and it grants 2 levels of Warrior's Trial for 4 turns, the limit being 10. So Warrior's Trial will go up 1 level when taking damage. It also raises the party's attack and max brave overflow limit, and it restores some HP, but just keep in mind that it doesn't stack. Next up we have his LD weapon, which is the Blade of Brenair. I hope I pronounced that right. And this will grant him the LD skill Impulse. So again, it raises his Brave based on attack, and it's an 8-hit AoE melee Brave HP attack that does split damage. It deals more damage on single targets. It grants Party Brave based on the HP damage dealt, and it will also grant him Blink for 3 turns. So Blink will trigger a counter attack where it raises his Brave based on attack, and it's a 3-hit melee Brave HP attack. It has a 150% max Brave overflow, and it will also deal splash damage, and it grants Party Brave based on the HP damage dealt. Once he counters, he will inflict knockdown on the target for 4 turns, which will lower attack and defense. And what's really good about this buff is that it reduces all of the damage that Gladio takes to 0, and it also reduces his chances of getting debuffed. So this is a really good LD, and if you are building up Gladio, go for this LD. It will really help. And another thing I want to point out is that he needs to get hit in order for the counter to proc. So if you're going to be summon board farming, don't give him the Shiva evasion passive or the Ramu evasion passive. Going over to the EX passives, at 1 out of 3 he gets Mighty Maelstrom, which will raise Brave damage. At 2 out of 3 he gets Warrior's Trial longer, which will extend his Warrior's Trial buff for 4 turns. And then at 3 out of 3 he gets Maelstrom Recast up, which will raise recast speed. Now going over to the LD passive, so at 1 out of 3 you get Mighty Impulse, which will raise Brave damage. At 2 out of 3 you get Knockdown longer, which will extend the knockdown debuff by 4 turns. And then at 3 out of 3 you get Charged Impulse, which will grant you another use of Impulse, and each time you limit break his LD, it will raise his attack. Finally, at 3 out of 3, you get the Maelstrom Brave HP Hit plus Brave Up Force Advance plus. So Maelstrom is now a 4-hit melee Brave HP attack delivered 3 times. It raises Brave by 20% of the HP damage dealt, and it also raises Brave damage and max Brave overflow limit. Okay, and then when the when the Crownsguard's Pride buff is active on Gladio, it changes his Brave and HP attack into Brave and HP attack double plus. So Brave attack plus is now 2 Brave hits that will raise Party Brave based on attack, and then HP attack plus is now a 2-hit melee Brave HP attack that raises the Brave based on attack. It has a 120% max Brave overflow, and it grants Party Brave based on the HP damage dealt. Sorry, my finger slipped right there. But his bonus spear we have is a HP damage raging attack all. So this is a B spear, and when you're taking HP damage, it raises the party's attack by 2% up to 5 times once per turn. Alright, so now for the boss on Gladio's event, we have the Optimus. It's a machinery type enemy, and you're going to be fighting 2 of them, and they don't have any sort of elemental weakness or resistance, or any sort of weakness or resistance to different kinds of attacks. So the key thing to point out on the top is that it will change its modes from blue, green to red when it uses conversion. It also uses abilities with HP damage more frequently in green mode, and then Brave Regen when it's in red mode. So its recast ability is called Destructive Laser. It will dispel all debuffs except for frame buffs. It will recover from break and then follows up with a guaranteed magic Brave HP attack that will lower stats and inflicts poison, and it has a low turn rate. So some of its usual attacks consist of like Brave Attack, Laser, Splash Cannon, Flare, and Meteor. Some of its unique attacks, there is Breeze Out, where it will recover from break and then follows up with an Ice Magic Brave HP attack. It has Flamethrower, which is a Fire Magic Brave attack that will boost attack and its critical hits. And then it has all Gatlings, where it will again recover from break, and then follows up with an AoE range Brave HP attack. Full Salvo is the same thing, but it will just raise its Brave first, and then follows up with an AoE Magic Brave HP attack. And then some of its last abilities it has is Mechanical Sounds Grow Louder, so this will raise its attack, speed, initial Brave, and max Brave, and it also gains Brave damage reduction. Mechanical Sounds Grew Even Louder will just raise its stats even more. So going over to the alternatives you can use, for starters, I mentioned that you can bring Gao or Kuja along. If you wanted to bring someone who could like who has an HP damage reduction buff. You could bring Porum, you could bring Bosch, or I think Warrior of Light has it as well. And then if you wanted to try and just silence the boss because it uses so many HP attacks, you could take Kefka or Arciella with you. And if you just wanted to focus on like single DPS or just focus mainly on damage, you could take Realm, or you could take Machina with you, or Kurasame if you have him built up to try and like help you deal more damage. Okay, so going over to the Lufenia requirement. So when you're fighting this boss on Lufenia difficulty, the orb will start at 8, and keep in mind that it is immune to attack down and lock. So the orb will appear when its HP is less than 80 to 50% or to 40%, and there's no way of stopping the countdown. So you do have to take the hit, and it does sound scary, I know, but if you're running someone who has HP damage reduction, then you shouldn't worry at all. Either bring Gladio with you or someone who has HP damage reduction. And then one last bit of information. So this is just talking about the recastability over here on the top, but for the countability over here on the bottom, so when the orb reaches 0, it removes all of its buffs, even the frame buffs. It then raises its Brave and then follows up with a single target Magic Brave HP attack, and it will specifically target the character with the lowest HP. So you kind of want to play around with this and, you know, to make sure that you don't die. So now I'm going to head over to Opera Omnia JP and I'm going to showcase Gladio's skills. So I will be right back. Okay, so we're back in Opera Omnia JP right now. So here is my Gladio. I've got everything on him, including his 7-star armor, and I also have his LD passive right over here. And artifact passives I'm running on him is just a mix of numerous things. It's just attack, max brave, and a couple of his C50 passives. And then I'm bringing Sabin along as well, just to show the cover mechanic for Gladio. Alright, so when you start off the quest, so he's got his Crown's Guard Pride and his Warrior's Trial buff on him right over here. And he also has a free skill use, so we're going to start off with Tempest. And now, as you can see, Sabin's got the Royal Guard buff on him, this buff here, which is for 10 turns. I'm just going to do a couple of HP attacks with him, because Gladio's like the main character I'm showing off. So now we're going to do Dawn Hammer. I love that little jump that he does, by the way. So right there, you can see it did like 1 damage to him on the second attack. But yeah, he now has like the Raven HP damage reduction on him. Alright, so now we're going to do his LD, which is Impulse. Okay, so he's going to be targeting Gladio again. And look at that. As long as you have that LD buff, Gladio will not take any damage at all, and he will trigger a counter. And now the Cactuar has the knockdown debuff on him, which will right there. Okay, come on, there we go. So here's the knockdown buff. It lowers his attack and his defense. So now I'm just going to do an HP attack. All right, so now he is targeting Sabin, so I'm going to do an HP attack right here. So now he's covering for him. And he counters again. Alright, so now we can show off the EX. Alright, so now for the big question. Should you pull for Gladio? Yes. He is Lufenia viable. He's going to help you a lot in Lufenia. He Brave Batteries the party. His LD reduces damage and debuffs, and he can counter, and he can deal massive damage with his EX+. So overall, he's a really great shield, and if you don't have other shields built up like Warrior of Light or Bosch, then yes, go for Gladio. He's definitely worth the resources. So that pretty much covers up everything for Gladio, so thank you guys very much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.